Jacob, thank you so much for inviting me to be at the B2B Tech Sales Summit. I thought it was really apt that I attended on the back of publishing the book Tech Powered Sales recently. It's published by HarperCollins Leadership out of New York and also the American Management Association. So we're living in really interesting times. If you have a think about what's really going on in the world, we've had the pandemic for a few years, and that really was a catalyst for this thing we call the fourth industrial revolution. It's really been the impetus for a digital first world. And everyone had to adapt in the way that they sell, especially tech, in a remote selling world. But digital engagement really quickly became digital disengagement. What I saw in the world is sellers really struggling. And I work with some of the biggest tech brands globally, companies like Adobe, Salesforce, DocuSign, SAP, Qualtrics, IBM, Red Hat. These are all my clients that I've been working with for a long time, and especially helping them solve the number one problem that everybody says they have today, which is not enough consistent opportunity pipeline. So if we look at what's going on and the decision-making process inside our customer organizations, it's tough for them. They're facing inflation, cost increases, supply chain disruption. Obviously in Europe, there's the war that's going on. There's just all of these problems. Energy costs are spiraling. There's increasingly more uncertainty in the world, which is creating, in essence, decision paralysis for a lot of organizations. So in the session today, we're going to talk about three key things in the next 20 minutes. We're going to talk about how do we adopt the mindset and then a strategy to execute successfully, a concept of let's make the very excuse we're hearing from our customer the reality. If we think about tech sales, we know that our clients have no chance of successfully digitally transforming without embracing technology. We live at an inflection point in history, which is really unique. This point in time where you can concurrently drive cost down and at the same time drive revenue, loyalty, and productivity up. And the thing we know for organizations is that the experiences that they create are really the margins that they make. And we today can give people a much better experience with technology augmented with humans than through traditional methods. And everything that's gone on in the last few years has really driven this. Now, you might find this slide funny. A lot of people laugh when they see this slide and they go, this is so true. Often inside the customer organization, they think that because they have a budget, they have the approval to spend it. And often one of the big problems in selling is a salesperson will qualify whether the person has a budget. And often they never have enough budget is the reality. We need to, instead of thinking about budget, think about business case. How do we help the customer co-create the business case that provides the necessary level of funding and support for them to be successful? So when they think about budget, it's really interesting. An organization like Exxon, a big energy company, inside their own organization, 85% of business cases are rejected. Only 15% are approved. And of the 15% that are approved, only half of those ever get their money. So that's about 7% of the business cases that go up actually secure approval. In my part of the world, here in Australia, there's a tier one telco, a tier one telecommunications company called Optus. In their organization, 80% of business cases are rejected. So it's incredible. Just because someone has a budget doesn't mean they have the authority to spend it. Often sellers are what I describe, they're just good enough to fail, not good enough to succeed. And what I mean by that is if we're good enough to generate some interest where they agree to have a conversation, they'd even maybe like a demo. If you think about tech sales, they'd like a demo. And then what often happens is the deal goes deathly quiet. And that's obviously really bad. We need to be good enough to generate positive intent, commitment to change, not just interest in what it is that we offer. And the reason that that is so important is because all deals lead to the boardroom. All paths lead to the boardroom. And often inside the boardroom or that executive decision layer, there's a lot of pushback. And our champion, coach, supporter, sponsor of our deal, if we're trying to sell tech into an organization, as they seek approval, they'll hear things like what you can see on the screen. Hey, there's a lot of fatigue in the organization. We can't do everything. Why this particular initiative now? I've got 17 other things I'm being asked to approve. Why this now? I'm going to circle back to how we can deal with that risk that we face in our own deal. So we'll circle back and we'll actually talk about this. Just as I'm sharing these concepts and I'll go through these 3 key things, feel free to type your questions into chat. I can see chat and I'll answer them. So let's talk about the first key concept today, the first idea. Make the excuse the reason. Make the excuse the reason. And I'm going to share with you a true story. Before COVID hit 2.5 years ago, my biggest client globally was not a tech company, although tech is a key part of their value proposition to their customers. But it's a travel management company. They manage the travel programs for big corporates. And Flight Centre Travel Group is a publicly listed company. They operate globally, and they operate in London and Europe, Africa, all of Asia Pacific, North America. And they have these big brands. FCM Travel is their enterprise brand. Corporate Travelers, their mid-tier corporate brand. And they called me when COVID hit and they said, hey, Tony, whether it's our account managers calling an existing client or whether it's a new business account executive, an AE, trying to win a new logo account, we're hearing universally the same pushback. And it goes something like this. Look, I don't even know why you're phoning me. None of my staff are traveling. Ring me back when the airlines are in the air again. Now, I don't know what you think about that, but if you sold travel management services, you could run the travel program for a corporate. That's a brutal objection. So let's think about this concept of let's make the excuse the reason. I said to the leadership team, let's think about the reason that the person does not want to meet. The reason is none of my staff are traveling. Doesn't make sense to talk. Let's make that the reason. So this is what we came up with. We would phone the chief financial officer of the customer and say, hey, Mary, with none of your staff traveling right now, do you know what? I think there's an opportunity for you as CFO to drive somewhere between 8 and 12% of cost out of what will return to be the 3rd to 5th biggest expense line item on your P&L. And Mary, do you know what? With none of your staff traveling, you don't have any change management issues and you have the bandwidth in your admin team. And if we do this well, you'll also not just drive cost out, but you'll reduce duty of care risk and you drive up productivity and retention of your most valuable people in the business. Do you mind if I ask, when's the last time that you reviewed your travel policy and the way that you've been running travel as a process? Now, I don't know what you think of that, but the results that they've achieved in the last 2 years is they have won hundreds and hundreds of competitor accounts over to them while their competitor was in the fetal position, waiting out this economic problem. The pandemic was really an economic problem if you sell travel management, not just a health issue. While their competitors were pulling back, they stepped up and they've grown their business. Huge success. So think about this first concept. Make the excuse the reason. We now live in a digital first world. The 4th industrial revolution is a real thing. Technology is the key. Technology and automation is the key to driving cost out and productivity and margin and profit and loyalty up. So if you're in tech sales, really think about that. Let's go to the second idea. The second idea is, as we seek to engage, we need to talk the language of leaders. It's really critical. Do you know, disingenuous rapport building approaches don't work today? And here's the other thing. If you sell tech, and this is a tech sales conference, if you sell tech, the people that you're trying to get to are typically not looking to add more tech to the stack. They're not wanting another vendor that they have to deal with. Do you know, for the CIO, the CFO, the CEO, all of these key roles, they're often thinking, how do we consolidate the stack? How do we reduce the number of vendors that we're dealing with? Let's make integration the vendor's problem by moving away from best of breed specialists. So really think about this, and we need to talk the language of leaders. Most sellers create their own objections, their own problems by talking about what they do. We'll come to that in point number 3. So we need a point of view for how they can drive improved results in their role. We got a great question here from Ronja. How often do you believe one should reevaluate the current sales messaging strategy to ensure a great level of engagement? All the time. You need to be reviewing your messaging all the time. While ever we sound like somebody else, our messaging won't work. Most people are loading bad messaging that's perceived as spam by the customer into their Gatling gun of automation, into these sales engagement platforms. I talk a lot about this in the Tech Powered Sales book. So you need to review your messaging and make sure that it's relevant to the industry vertical and the buyer personas. We need to move away from generic messaging. How does this help the person in their role drive improved results? So thank you for the question, Ronja. So when we think about talking the language of leaders, the real decision makers look at everything through this kind of lens. Beyond the mythical, exaggerated return on investment claims from the vendor, they're thinking, what cost savings can we really bank on? Do these alleged productivity gains really monetize? What's the bottom line impact? Either top line revenue impact or bottom line profit impact? How quickly does this pay for itself? What risk is involved in change, in doing this, in implementing it and making sure it's adopted and delivers? Can we maybe delay this? This is what's happening with the people above the level that we typically sell to. And we need to equip the person that we sell to be able to do this well. So when you think about the language of leaders think about driving positive results and managing risk. What's the euro or the dollar or the pound or whatever your currency is impact? What's the percentage improvement? What is the business case? And strategic selling by definition means engage early and co-create the business case and shape the agenda and create a positive bias in their requirements toward us. If we're the one that is able to do those things and help them secure consensus, identify and manage their risks, we become the emotional favorite. This is how we succeed. So just as we're all at the run up to the holiday season, we're in the run up to Christmas. Obviously, it's winter in the Northern Hemisphere. For me, down here in Australia, we're coming into our summer vacation period, and there's a lot of deal risk as we come into a holiday period. Less so in North America and Europe, but very much so in the Southern Hemisphere, because it's not just a festival period, it's also a big summer vacation period. And the 4 reasons that deals typically slip, stall, and die, the first one is a lack of compelling commercial value in the people that sign it off. The next thing is there's an absence of consensus or trust. Not everybody is on board. And then maybe we're not aligned in process and timing. Are you building a mutual plan as a sales professional to de-risk the close on your deal and making sure those mutual plans go all of the way through to successful implementation, not just our purchase order? And then the 4th reason that a deal can slip, stall, and die is some kind of negative surprise. Time risk. Our key supporter leaves, they get acquired, they post bad results, a pandemic hits, Europe goes into recession, something even worse happens with the war or energy supplies. So just think about, these are the reasons that deals stall, and the way we open determines whether we're ever going to get to close. Opening really is the new closing. And I'm going to share with you in a moment how we can open deals and transform the way that we engage. It's the biggest takeaway for today. This is how you de-risk closing your deal. When you're working with the person that's your sponsor, your champion, your coach in the deal, you need to ask them, when you take this up the line for approval internally and you hear some kind of pushback, how are you going to finish these 2 sentences? This is essential because it pays for itself by. If the person we're selling to doesn't have a compelling answer, our deal's in trouble. Just because it makes their life easier just because it helps them with their KPIs, it gives them a little bit of time back, makes things, automation, streamlines things. That's not a business benefit. How does this impact revenue, profit, bottom line results? So in every deal, if you're forecasting to your own boss, you need to be able to articulate the compelling commercial value for getting this done. Let's finish up on the third idea for today. So the first idea was make the excuse the reason. The next thing is talk the language of leaders. And the third thing is create impact in your message. We need to nail our conversation narrative. Albert Einstein said, if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. Every time we spring from the bushes and surprise somebody with a new conversation, they have not met us yet, the attention clock starts ticking down. And the attention clock, the best it gets for us is 7 seconds before they stop listening. Just 7 seconds before they stop listening. So here's the framework to grab someone's attention. I want you to think about this concept of flip it. Flip the order of the conversation. Most sellers start at the bottom. They talk about their capabilities. Let's imagine that I worked for Salesforce. They're one of the world's leading tech companies. So I said, hi, Mike, it's Tony from Salesforce. We're the global market leader in CRM and customer experience software. The moment we say that, what we do is create an objection. We're not looking to re-platform our CRM at the moment. Send me an email. We're not looking to change right now. I've worked with Salesforce previously. It's not something we're looking at doing. All we do is create an objection, or if we've been brave enough to elevate the conversation, we get pushed down to people who evaluate tech. So instead of opening that way, let's go top down. Let's lead with a point of view on how this person in their role can drive improved results that matter not just to them, but to the company. And then when they say, well, how do you think I'd do that? We say, well, it's around a strategy of, or it's around you being able to, rather than talking about our product. And if we do this well, they'll be hooked. Their interest will be hooked in how they can improve the results in their role in a way that makes them a hero in their organization. And then the strategy will make sense. Now, let's imagine as a tech seller, you're selling marketing automation software. I'm sure some of the people on this in this seminar today, in this summit, do sell marketing automation software. So if I was talking to a chief marketing officer, I would say something like, hey, Mary, the reason for the call is I think there could be a way for you to reduce acquisition costs and at the same time improve average order size. Let's imagine they're a CMO, a marketing manager for an online retail business. And if Mary says, well, how do you think I could do that? We say, well, it's around more precise, pardon me, it's around more precise targeting where there's stronger buying intent and with stronger personalization to create more effective engagement. That's how we're seeing other retailers reduce the cost of acquisition by up to 20% and improving average order sizes by around 15%. Do you mind if I ask, what's your strategy to drive down acquisition cost right now? And then if she says, well, how would you help us improve targeting and personalization? And again, if I was maybe somewhere like Salesforce, I would say, well, it's all about having a complete view of the customer and be able to unlock data insights that enable you to execute that as a strategy. Identify where the strongest buying intent is and what the best attributes are for personalization. So that's an example of how you can transform messaging. Now, just before we go to Q&A, I just want to finish with an example. I talked today about when we successfully sell to our buyer persona. Imagine you were selling CRM software. Imagine you are maybe HubSpot. You're selling CRM and marketing automation, and you've succeeded with the chief marketing officer and the chief sales officer. And now they go off to their boss, the CEO, for approval. Now, this is a true story. I was once the sales director for a public corporation, Objective Corporation. And the CEO of the business had approved us going to market to buy a CRM. And what I didn't know when I joined the company was that my two predecessors in this role of head of sales globally, they'd both gone to market to buy a CRM at his instruction. But on both occasions for them, he never approved it. And instead of approving it, he ended up firing them, which was what led to me joining the company. So now I joined the business. He says, look, we need a new CRM, go to market, you've got a budget, I accept that we need to do it. And then I'm in there trying to secure approval in my Monday morning regular meeting with him. And week after week, I was getting rejected. The request was being knocked back. It was being rejected. And in the end, I realized, hey, Tony, you're meant to be good at selling. You need to drink some of your own champagne here and think about this, right? You need to sell him on this. So in one of the meetings, I said to him, this is essential in you reinstilling confidence in you and the company at board level around the forecast. And it's how you hold me and the organization to account for delivering on the growth that you've committed to the board. And this is going to pay for itself with higher deal win rates. Sign it off. And he did. So the three key things today, as you go to market, we've got economic headwinds in this new economy for 2023. Every decision within the customer organization is going to be scrutinized. So we need to make sure we talk the language of leaders. We have an effective narrative for opening that also carries all of the way through to closing around the compelling commercial value for change. So I'd encourage you to read Tech Powered Sales. Feel free to connect with me inside LinkedIn. And my personal website, tonyhughes.com.au, has got lots of free content. And we've got e-learning around these concepts at salesiqglobal.com. So let's go ahead and jump into some questions. So Lorraine, I can see your question here. Do you generally believe that the process of elevating engagement by transforming the messaging should be following a slow adjustment, or is it possible to implement it rapidly but efficiently? You can implement it rapidly but efficiently. I was working with a tier 1 tech company earlier this week. It's Thursday at the moment. This was Monday. I ran a 4-hour session on creating pipeline and transforming the narrative. Their manager emailed me yesterday and said in the 24 hours following it, the team just in Sydney, just the Sydney office, generated more than $1 million of new pipeline. So what we did is we moved away from talking about us and what we do. Instead of that, we had a point of view on how we think that buyer persona we're engaging with can drive improved results in their role. It's a different mindset. If we exercise the muscle and we do it naturally, we'll absolutely be successful. Hey, Emma, did you want me to go to the other question with Stephanie? Have we got time for that?
Yes, I think we have 1 more minute or so to do the last question. So Stephanie is wondering here about CRM systems. When using trigger events in a CRM system to further contextualize engagement, do you have some big do's and don'ts when it comes to this in order to, maximize the engagement? I guess that's a fairly big question to answer in a short amount of time, but...
Okay, so I know we're coming up on time, so I'll make sure I don't go any longer than 90 seconds. So trigger events create awareness of need or opportunity in the mind of the buyer, and they create context for our outreach. A trigger event is something that happens against an attribute within our ideal customer profile. Often it's around a buyer persona role, a new person into a role. If we decide we target tech companies that are growing, we go, well, a trigger event could be a capital raise. So you would use the capital raise as the reason for why you're calling as context. But the comment I'll make is this. Most people know they need to add personalization, and they do a god-awful, terrible job of injecting personalization, and it just doesn't work. Hey, Tony, I noticed that you're Sales Innovation Director at Sales IQ Global. That is rubbish personalization. Last week, I received 87 in-mails in my LinkedIn inbox congratulating me on my work anniversary, and 2/3 of them tagged it with a pitch. That's rubbish personalization that damages you. So personalization is the most difficult thing to get right. So Emma, thank you so much. Jacob, I know we're up for time. It's important to keep things rolling and keep it on time. So thanks for having me, everybody. And Jacob, I'll hand back to you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, Tony.
Yeah.